Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming to Sitel for this interview.
Well, thank you for having me.
Senior U.S. officials, including the Vice President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, are visiting Europe for the first time this week after their inauguration of the new U.S. administration to discuss with the European leaders in Brussels and in Munich about the NATO, European Union, the challenges for the European Union and the transatlantic cooperation. What are the positions of the new U.S. administrations on NATO and the European Union?
Well, as you say, you're seeing this week in Brussels, in Bonn, in Munich, the President Trump's administration sort of coming in full force, if you will, to Europe to engage with many of our most important partners. You've seen Secretary Mattis speak at NATO, and he said yesterday that he was quite optimistic about his engagements with his defense minister colleagues. He said that NATO is a bedrock for the United States. And they talked about some of the challenges, the well-known challenges that the alliance faces, challenges of Russia's behavior in Ukraine and Crimea. He said, we're not going to compromise our values to anybody in confronting terrorism. And more generally, as an alliance coming together to make sure we're making the contributions to our common defense that we need to make. So you see him doing that. You'll see Secretary Tillerson. You'll see the Vice President in Munich. And I think you'll see them reinforcing our strong support for NATO and the transatlantic relationship. So what does that mean, here? That's what people are looking at. I think the story is that our position, which we've had in the Western Balkans, for Macedonia in particular, of seeking and working towards Macedonia's integration into Europe, Euro-Atlantic institutions, is still intact. I'm not surprised by that. That's gone through 20 years, more than 20 years. So I think you're seeing a strong affirmation of our belief in the transatlantic relationship and the need for that relationship to combat the challenges we face, whether it be from issues, as I say, with regard to Russia and its actions in Ukraine and Crimea, but also the threat of terrorism and many other issues.
Ambassador, Republican Chris Smith and 5 other members of Congress, as well as Senator Mike Lee, sent inquiries regarding the allegations that you, as the U.S. ambassador in Macedonia and the U.S. Embassy, were influencing the elections in Macedonia by supporting far leftist organizations, media outlets, internet portals. Have you responded to these inquiries?
Yes, we have responded to the inquiries. Both of them. Look, congressional oversight of the executive branch is a normal part of our democracy, and we welcome the opportunity to engage with Congress in telling them what we're doing it and giving them the context of why we do it. In the response, we laid out our role, which people here know very well, in the Prigino Agreement of working with the European Union to help bring the parties together to get to the elections you had in December, and now you're at a government formation process. So we laid out all those things. We laid out how our assistance works in the country. What we support is helping build the institutions of a healthy democracy. That includes engagement by citizens in their affairs. And that includes media and other things. So we laid out all of that in our response. Now you're probably going to say, well, why haven't you released the response? Yeah. Well, there's a very simple answer. The Department of State does not publicly release its correspondence with Congress. Sometimes Congress will release it, and that's where, so Senator Lee, for example, has the response, or his letter on his website. So maybe that will come out, but there's nothing particularly new or surprising that you would find in that, and some details about our programs and grants.
Well, Ambassador, after the elections here in Macedonia, ВМРО-ДПМН said that they are starting this process of de-Sorosization, the so-called process of de-Sorosization. The party assessed that the Soros organizations, which have often been supported also by USAID, have been working tendenciously to topple the rightist government and to unfairly help SDSM. How do you comment on this?
Well, that USAID is working to topple the government is simply not true. So let me tell you what we do support through our grants to, for example, to the Open Society Foundation. They administered a grant on civic engagement. So what does civic engagement mean? It means women in Tetovo working together to improve gender equality in their community, in their municipality. Citizen engagement means youth in Veles or Delchevo working to improve their community, to beautify their city. It means citizens in Vitola addressing the issue of environmental quality, air pollution, in bringing issues to the fore, but also engaging in projects that they can, in their capacity, to do. So that's what we mean by citizen engagement, and that's what our USAID grants are about. They're not about supporting an ideology, they're not about supporting a political party or anything like that. That's not what that's about. It's about creating the conditions for an active, healthy democracy.
2 months after the elections, it seems that the political situation in Macedonia is no less complicated than before the elections. We see that it's very hard to form a new government in Macedonia. You were directly involved in facilitating the process of adoption and implementation of the Pershing 1 and 2 agreements. How do you see the current situation? And do you expect a new government to be formed anytime soon?
Well, it's going to be up to 61 members of parliament to decide whether there's a new government or not. So you'd have to ask them that. But my analysis of the situation would be the following. You have, after this process, you had elections on December 11th that had wide participation, that produced very close results between the parties. And so now what you have, this was in fact the closest election I think Macedonia has ever had. You have the task now from moving from election to governing. And so the parties, the different political options, have been trying respectively to put together coalitions that can then take the country forward and govern. I think what you'll see from the international community and what we've stressed, what I think other ambassadors have stressed, what Commissioner Hahn has stressed, is that from our perspective, what's important is that the new government work towards fulfilling the reforms that are laid out in the Pershing Agreement, the urgent reform priorities, those that are discussed in the Priebus report. That's what we're looking for from a government. So right now the challenge is to put together that majority in parliament. This is not an unusual situation for a parliamentary democracy. But it's going to require, in some cases, not just a politics where one side pushes something over on the other, bullies, and then another side boycotts. That kind of politics isn't going to get you, in this situation, to the reform agenda that I think citizens of this country support.
Do you think that the resolution of this crisis could be achieved by the option that VMRO-DPMNE has been advocating, and that is new elections, or maybe a broad government coalition of all political parties?
Look, it's not up to me to decide what option is the right one in this situation. The parties are going to have to do that. Any decision, whether it be to go to this form of government coalition or elections, is going to require 61 votes in Parliament. So that's where the discussion is. I would observe, as a friend, that new elections don't necessarily produce different results. And on Telma the other night, there was a poll saying that citizens weren't that interested in a new election. So I think the challenge is to govern with the results you have and see where it leads. I don't know how that will be, but again, it's up to Parliament to decide that.
During these post-election talks between the political parties, the ethnic Albanian political parties imposed a so-called platform as a condition for coalescing with ВМРО-ДПМН or SDSM. The issues that are in these platforms were not the reason for going to early parliamentary elections. But now it seems that they are critical for the resolvement of the political crisis. What is your opinion on this platform?
Look, in terms of the substance of the platform, of this platform or anybody else's platform or anybody else's conditions for going into government coalition, I don't have a position on that. That's not what, as I said, the international community is focused on. What we are focused on is the reforms in areas such as the rule of law and in other areas that have been laid out in the urgent reform priorities that will help bring Macedonia closer towards its goal of being a full member of NATO, being a full member of the European Union. That's what we're working on. I'm not going into the detailed negotiations between parties. I assume they're talking about a lot of different things. So that's up to them to decide and to see if they can form a working coalition in government.
One of the conditions for coalescing is also the extension of the mandate of the Special Prosecutor's Office. ВМРО-ДПМН is against it. They are claiming that this institution is working tendentiously against the members of this political party and working only against them, which is biased by them work by the Special Prosecutor's Office. Are you taking into consideration their arguments when you, as an international community and an ambassador, are giving support to this Special Prosecutor's Office? And why asking for extension of the mandate of the Special Prosecution Office when the Persian Agreement, which was supported by all political parties, said that the mandate will be 18 months?
Right. Of course we listen to all the views of all the parties. Of course we listen to the views of ВМРО-ДПМН. There's no reason we wouldn't do that. But I think on the issue of the special prosecutor and the question of the 18-month mandate for filing indictments, that's what it's about. It's important to take a step back and remember what the point of the Special Prosecutor's Office is. It is to establish accountability for the allegedly illegal interception of telephone communications and the content of those communications, what they may or may not reveal. Now, in September of 2015, when this office, was being put together as part of the July agreement, I'm not sure anybody really had a very good grasp of just how much material there was, what that meant in terms of the task of going through it and deciding what needed to be done. Experts from the United States that we've discussed this with, who've sort of seen what the task is, don't believe that you could reasonably get through that material in the time allowed for indictments. So that's one problem. It's simply a matter of volume. The second question is that I do believe that there have been a fair amount of difficulty and indeed some obstructions in terms of the institutions in cooperating with the investigations that are taking place. And so I think it's important at the end to get to the goal of establishing what the facts are not, to not let this process end where everybody gets to go away with false information, rumors, speculations, and it just ends like that. The point is to establish the facts and not let that sort of air of uncertainty reign. That's not going to help the country.
Ambassador, thank you for this interview for Sitel.
Thank you very much.